going on, everyone? Welcome to the KSP Studios podcast, kung saan natin pinag-uusapan ang mga bagay na kulang sa pansin. My name is Gabe Carino, and I will be your host for tonight's episode. So, tonight we will be sitting down with Jonas Marie Dumdum. Jonas is an alumnus of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, with a degree in chemistry, and acquired his master's degree in renewable energy and resource management. This is all coming from the University of South Wales. So he is a chemist by profession and a passionate advocate for sustainability and the environment. So, Jonas, welcome to the studios.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. So, Jonas, is it okay if you do a little introduction of yourself?
So I've been a sustainability practitioner for about 5 years here in the Philippines. But before that, I did renewable energy as an occupation. And then before that, I was doing my master's in renewables with what I'd like to call a side flavor in chemistry because that's my undergrad in UPLB. So whenever I explain things on issues on sustainable development, I do it from a scientific perspective compared to my colleagues that are more into advocacy, like NGO advocacy work or in business. And it's good to have this kind of perspective to kind of understand that it's not about what you see right in front of you or issues that were related to money or issues related to basically the noise that is sustainability, being that
Right.
it's a buzzword nowadays.
It
So
is. It's being thrown around everywhere.
yeah, same with climate change, and we'll discuss
Yeah.
discuss that later. But yeah, that basically is my job, trying
Mhm.
to make things more objective and
Mhm.
has basis, because if we act on, let's say, haka-haka lang, or
Mhm.
some belief na hindi pala siya totoo, no, or walang backing of any scientific evidence, then we maybe get thrown off the road and do something that might have some negative impacts tuloy to the environment.
Right. So is it harder to get your ideas across because you're coming from a very technical, side, and not a lot of people would understand what you're saying.
Well, not exactly. Sometimes it can. Well, there are times that it can be if
Mhm.
the people that I would talk to are decision makers. But if you ask me as from a layman's perspective, how climate change works, then I'll do my best to really go down to the level of the layman and explain why it's happening and why are we experiencing it, especially now.
Right. So in layman's terms, can you lay it out on us on
Okay.
what exactly is climate change?
When we talk about climate change, we talk about what we call a human-induced climate change.
Mm,
So every year, in the Philippines at least, we do have a wet season and a dry season, right?
right.
And we have a predicted set of months where we would get rains and we would get typhoons, and we would have the summer, right? The
Hmm.
time that you really want to go to the beach and do stuff that can definitely be worth going to the beach.
Right.
Unfortunately, for the past 200 years, ever since in the late 1800s, 1895 to be more specific, the scientists have already been starting to see the different impacts that we humans have done to the environment because we want to progress. We want to have a society that has better incomes, better products and services, and
Hmm.
it's not that bad, honestly.
Was 1895 the start of the Industrial Revolution? Is that
Yeah, around that time, what we call
right?
the second industrial revolution, the
Okay.
full mechanization of things, and we started to use coal and we started to use
Right.
oil, and sometimes it's where we start our path. Sometimes we can even go even earlier to like 1850.
Wow.
But for me, 1890s would be a good start because that's where the like mass mechanization, mass industrialization really came in across parts of the world, even here in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So because we've been using a lot of energy that we would usually call dirty, so coal, unrefined fuel, which eventually became diesel and gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it has some unintended but serious consequences. No, these contribute to gases that will accelerate what we call the greenhouse effect.
Right.
If you've heard of the term in the 1990s,
Do we still
basically,
use that?
uh, we can still use that, but it's now part of the climate change umbrella,
Right, right.
if you will. So be, carbon dioxide is a natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
It actually helps keep things warm in the world. Otherwise, we'd be like the moon,
Mm-hmm.
where it's going to be frozen. But pumping more CO2 than the planet actually can afford, or
Right.
there's like a budget. It's like a bank. If
Mm-hmm.
you if you over withdraw basically the limits of what we can tolerate, no,
Mm-hmm.
then the world will get warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer.
Right.
And we're now seeing it right now. The latest IPCC reports being that there are so many reports ever since 2021
Mm-hmm.
states that if we go in their to our current trajectory, uh, it will end up uh, our situation will end up having temperatures that are 1.5 degrees and higher
Mm-hmm.
than what our ancestors in the 1800s experienced. And so what's the impact? It will definitely get warmer near the equator where we are,
Mm.
by as much as 4 or 5 degrees, and then accounting
Four
for
to five
what we
degrees.
yeah 4 to 5 degrees. And if we account for the heat index, basically, or the amount of the estimated amount of temperature that you can really feel outside,
Right.
then that 5 degrees looks like 7, 8 degrees now. No, so
Oh.
if you think about it, if Manila registered around 36 degrees Celsius probably like a few days ago,
Mm-hmm.
if you add 8 degrees to that,
Oh my gosh, that's like 40 something.
40 something, right? 42 degrees.
Is that even bearable?
You're gonna have to ask yourself, can the Filipino tolerate 42-degree heat? If you're a
Mm.
traffic enforcer in the middle of EDSA,
Right.
you know, scorching hot, trying to manage traffic at 42 degrees Celsius, could you really stand after 1 hour?
Right. In the
Yeah.
middle of traffic where there's
In the
also
middle
heat
of
coming
there's
from
also
the
heat
vehicles.
coming through the vehicles, the road itself, the
Right.
buildings around you.
It's
So
hell.
it's hell. It's absolute hell. And that's really the impact. Now, what would be the impact of climate change?
Mm.
One, human health, heat stroke,
Yeah.
cardiovascular diseases, and stuff like that. The un That's your immediate impacts. Not so immediate impacts of climate change would include COVID-19 and other related diseases, because these
Mm.
are things that are the impacts of warming temperatures. There are
Right.
certain viruses and bacteria that would be more friendly to these conditions, but not really to us.
Right.
So expect more issues on, let's say, dengue, malaria.
Mm.
Those thrive really in warmer and more moist temperatures, or more humid temperatures, if you will.
Right.
And that's going to be a health issue. Another issue is agriculture.
Ooh,
Would
that's a
your
big one.
would your farmer really go outside to harvest, let's say, your palay
Mm-hmm.
uh in 42 degrees Celsius, if there is even
Right.
enough yield for that? Because I mean, if it at higher temperatures, plants die.
Yeah.
Plants die, and if plants die, that includes our crops.
Right.
So I imagine, trying to grow tomatoes in
I don't
40
think you
degree
could. Yeah. And not to
They don't
mention the
yeah,
typhoons that will come because of, the whole thing.
that's another thing, typhoons.
Mm-hmm.
When before the typhoons, it's a seasonal. You always start in July and
Mm-hmm.
then end in September. What happened last year was that December 25, a storm hit Mindanao. It
Right.
hit even my mom's home province of Misamis Occidental.
Oh,
And it really swept my mom's home city,
wow.
Orqueta City, to the point that there were people that lost their homes, uh, even lost their Christmas dinner
Yeah,
because it was on the evening of Christmas.
right.
Um, and and streets were flooded. Uh, People died as a
Mm-hmm.
result because they didn't expect that from happening, and the whole city was washed up in mud because apparently somebody had an initiative to do some illegal logging somewhere,
Oh,
and the
wow.
impact is on
The,
on the city's streets, really, like the
right.
whole city, Putikan. And it
Wow.
was the first time in how many years that that city experienced that kind of a disaster.
So these are
So
these are one of the things that we can look forward to if we continue with this trajectory.
yeah, exactly. It would be worse than Yolanda. It
Oh
will
my gosh.
definitely be worse than Yolanda. And we're seeing it now. We're really seeing it now in places that are not expecting to have typhoons. Then all of a sudden, you ruin your holidays because a typhoon passed by.
Right.
Definitely bad.
But we have a lot of people have been trying to battle climate change for, I think since the 90s or the 80s,
Mm.
maybe as early as that. Why is nothing happening?
Well, that's also like an issue about our water situation.
Mhm,
As our viewers may, or as our listeners may know, we're having a
mhm,
water crisis in Metro Manila. We had a water crisis in Metro Manila in the 1990s also.
mhm,
Uh, and the reason is that uh, the actions cannot cope with the times of today. Like
mhm,
Metro Manila in the 1990s was how many million? Probably 6 million. I
mhm.
forgot my statistics. But right now, Metro Manila is around 10 to 11 million.
Right.
And if they're still following the old playbook on the water crisis, then it's not going to be enough to cope with the situation. By the way, having a lack of water is also a sign of climate change
Yeah.
because fresh water is impacted by higher temperatures. More evaporation will help. Will be happening.
Right.
And you can't get seawater, of course, because we don't have desalination plants in Metro Manila. So
Oh, we don't.
uh, we do not. We do
Wow.
not.
We're
We get
surrounded
our
by salt water. Well, we don't
yeah.
have.
We
Wow.
we g- we get it from Angat Dam. We get it from Ipo Dam. We get it from the Mesa Dam. Caliraya Dam also in Laguna. We get it from the Laguna Lake.
Mhm,
But we have to realize that, of course, without the rains to support the dams,
mhm.
during the dry season, the dams will eventually dry up if we don't use our water conservatively. Therefore, you're going to definitely have issues in the water. And if the stakeholders, I don't want to blame just the government. If
Mhm.
everyone, all the stakeholders would not realize that this is now happening, it's going to be impacting everyone, then good luck. By the time that we would have a situation where we would end up with zero water. It happened before in South Africa.
It Can
So
you give us an example of what exactly happened during that time?
so so Cape Town, South Africa, about 2 3 years ago. Again, may have to check the sources here.
Mhm,
Um, did they had a long drought, and they were overusing their water until such time that the faucets of their water supplies were already pulling out mud, really.
wow.
Yeah. And the city almost ran out of water. If the local governments had not acted on it,
Mhm.
then yeah, the whole city of Cape Town, South Africa would not have enough water.
So that can
And
actually experience in our hometown in
Knock
Manila.
on wood, knock on wood. But
Mm,
yeah, if you do nothing, if we go to the idea of business as usual,
mm-hmm.
then that may happen. May is the
May.
word here,
Do we have
unless we
like
do something.
do you have like a timeline of when it might happen?
No, not at the moment, because
Mm,
I'm still looking at some data that may contain some predictions.
right.
But if you like personal opinion, if you really ask me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, probably about 5 years
Wow,
from now,
that's not so far away.
not so far away. But the thing is, if we addressed the situation of the lack of water in Manila before, and that was
Mhm.
like in the 1990s, and then we can still address it today. It just needs to be done, um, in concert with the people that would be doing the decisions and the people that would be affected by decisions. Otherwise, whatever actions that you take will amount to nothing.
Right,
You push on one end and the other people say, "Yay, we're gonna get extra water." So you really have to do something to kind of address the situation on the front lines at the same time on the back. Uh, it just has to happen that way.
right. So who exactly are these decision makers? Who are we supposed
So
to talk to?
the people that we really need to talk to are the policymakers. That would be your local government. That could be the national government.
Mm,
Well, the DNR mostly, or and related agencies. But the thing is, uh, the most impact is actually felt in the local governments, because they do have a say in these issues. And if their constituents are not talking about this, then
mm-hmm.
it won't get cascaded up the ladder.
Right.
And I've seen uh, citizens and civil service organizations that have made representations, and I think we really need to do more.
Mm. Have you seen, are you aware of the efforts that are going on right now? And do you think it's enough? Or
Uh,
should more people start doing, start speaking up?
I mean, there are people that are already speaking up, but unfortunately, more needs to happen.
Mm.
Like right now, I'm telling you that there's going to be a water
Right.
crisis. You're going to hear it on TV also, but are people really talking about it? On the issue of climate change, or is the government really moving towards climate change?
Mm-hmm.
Not really, because it's not being felt, or it's not being discussed in our homes, or in our communities.
Mm.
So we want to, as much as possible, resist using climate change as a buzzword. We should really act on it, because it will impact not just the environment. It's going to impact our lives,
Right.
basically. Not having water, without having clean electricity, not having good services, because of impacts to climate. Everything is impacted by climate change, by the way. It's not just it's not just homes, but like even businesses
Right.
would be impacted by even the BPO industry actually would be impacted by climate
Really?
change. Yeah.
How would
Um,
they be affected?
well, you have data centers, and data centers
Okay,
gobble up a lot of electricity, and
I see.
the more electricity that will come from coal, or the fossil fuels, will
Mhm.
definitely increase the amount of emissions generated by the power sector.
I see.
So unless there's a way to green the BPO industry in terms of their data centers, or any of their IT related um, stuff, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, then uh, yeah, it's going to be very hard
Right,
to to
right.
to decarbonize. Let's see. Yeah, it has to be talked about now, or should have been talked about yesterday. But
Right, right.
there more should happen. More should
Mm.
happen.
So right now, the state of the Philippines, where are we getting our energy?
Well, it's mostly, I think it's more, it's like 58, 59%, like more than 50%, if I remember, come from coal sources.
Oh.
Uh, and it's mostly in, well, actually, it's all across the archipelago, no, in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And as a result, if you look at only carbon dioxide emissions,
Mm.
power industry and the transport industry actually contribute to about 70% of total emissions in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Now the people from, the naysayers will say, oh, we're only contributing 0.03% of
Mm.
the total amount of emissions. But the thing is, we breathe the same air, we drink the same water, so what's the
Mm-hmm.
point?
Right, right. That's
No,
very true. That's
yeah.
very true.
No, in the end, it's really about being more responsible. And if you're going to be responsible, be more responsible, you can really act as a model for others to follow.
Right. And yeah, I grew up in the Philippines. I grew up in Las Piñas.
Mm,
So we're kind of near Tagaytay, the Cavite
mm,
area. And so I remember every morning when I woke up as a kid, there would be fog. At like 6 a.m. There would be fog, there would be dew on the flowers and on the grass. And I started to see change. I think at around 2003, 2004, when I
mm,
couldn't see those things anymore. Even during Christmas. I remember every Christmas season, you could have jackets on because it's really cold.
mm.
But now we don't do that anymore. And so if if that changed from the 90s to the early 2000s that fast, is it even gonna get worse now?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is that yeah, experts predict that if we don't do something to limit the amount of temperature rise
Mm,
to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050, then uh, it would be irreversible. The idea is that whatever change that we do after 2050, it's not going to solve the climate problem anymore.
mm,
You know? So right now we're about 1.1 degrees Celsius.
okay.
Uh, we're just zero point 0.4 degrees away from the predicted limit.
Mm-hmm.
And people are already moving on this. There are already policies that are being done on this. However, some of, like here in the Philippines, the policies on climate are still uh, have yet to be clarified,
Mm-hmm.
really, on what will happen. Are we going to do a net zero target? Are we going to do decarbonization objectives? The only thing that's being done, like, well, in a more concrete fashion, is that no new coal applications have been approved
Mm-hmm.
ever since the last few years of the previous administration, and this policy has been carried on with this current administration. Uh, so you're expecting no new coal power plants anytime soon. The issue now is what to do with the remaining coal power plants that were turned on. I mean, that were switched on
Right.
um, and are considered new, or the ones that are aging. So yeah, how can we accelerate their closure and make a switch to renewables? Now,
Right.
the question is it easy to do that? The answer is also no,
Mm,
uh, because we have to understand some basic electrical engineering principles also in relation to the national grid. The national grid is designed um, with coal power plants and formerly oil power plants and like natural gas plants in mind.
mhm.
Now we have to make the system adapt to renewable energy for one, and we do have that nuclear debate that's ongoing right now. So how
Right.
are we going to adapt to that as well? Um, that also needs to be discussed
Mhm.
in our household, because in our households and in the local communities, because of course, uh, we go back to the issue that we cannot just switch off these power plants. There has to
Right.
be a way to make a what we call a transition to renewable energy.
Hmm. So, as a sustainable practitioner, do you think that um, converting to nuclear energy would be better?
As a chemist, I would definitely say no.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
put my chemistry hat here and say no. And the reason being is that in order for you to have a nuclear energy program, you have to ensure that our sites would be free from any potential earthquakes that will happen, or probably like volcanic eruption that will happen. So
Hmm.
any seismic or volcanic shifts. Another is that where are we going to dispose of our wastes? And
Hmm.
even if the latest designs on nuclear energy uh, are more small, more compact, that's great. But
Hmm.
the issue is, where do you transport the waste? We don't have a good place that's like isolated in the mountains or
Right.
something that's close to like a water source, whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, and for the viewers, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm very much open to this debate. Um, but anyway, the waste disposal is very, very hard
Hmm.
for something like in the Philippines. We can't even dispose properly our plastic waste. How
Right.
can we even dispose nuclear waste, right? And lastly, it's really about the acceptability of of nuclear energy. I've been saying
Hmm.
renewables. Sorry, I've been advocating for renewables for a long time.
Yeah,
So
we'll
the
get on
issue
to that. Yeah.
of yeah, the idea of acceptability of nuclear energy in communities is also an issue, considering that you know the last major nuclear disaster is just near us, no? The
Hmm.
Fukushima Daiichi
Right.
nuclear power plant, when it was hit with the what the Japanese call the Great East Japan earthquake.
Yes.
Um, it's still in their memories, right?
Yeah, we're actually still living here in Japan. We're still reeling with it.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know if you've heard about the news, but they are planning on dumping all the waterways into the ocean.
yeah.
So we're all like, how is that? We're expecting a Godzilla to come out
Uh,
anytime soon. You know what I mean? So it's like every time I look out at the Tokyo Bay, I'm like looking for exit strategies in case a
yeah,
Godzilla
yeah.
comes out.
It comes in. See, so I know it's going to be far fetched that, and I
Right.
don't. I mean, the last Godzilla movie, by the way, they said it came from the Philippines, so
Oh,
that's
did it?
you don't you definitely need to rewatch it. But yeah, it did. Uh, yeah, that's what I remembered in the latest Godzilla movie.
Right,
So,
right.
um, anyway, so if we have that kind of problem in Japan that's more advanced, more adapt to these
Mm,
things, but they still have these fears, how much more here in the Philippines, right? I don't
right.
think any mayor, unless there's really something of his a personal interest of his, would be able to host a nuclear energy plant.
Right,
So
right. Not even the one in, I'm sorry, where is that? Up in the north? They don't
the
want to continue that.
Bataan,
Yeah, the Bataan
the BN,
nuclear
yeah,
power
but
plant.
the nuclear power plant. So actually, there are certain um sectors that want to revive BNPP,
Mm,
but using a more modern design. But the major issue about the BNPP is that it sits along an earthquake fault.
ooh,
And that's really the reason why it wasn't activated in the first place.
right.
So, how would you address that? Especially now, I mean, considering that the building was built, but when our grandfathers were still working, so
Right.
it's not really a good starting conversation there.
Yeah. It's kind of scary to come to think of it. Didn't they know that it was actually on a fault line?
Uh, I don't know exactly, so I have to like revisit
Right.
the narratives of the time. But
Mm,
I bet somebody did say that. and then no one really noticed until somebody did say that. That's how I would imagine it, and then
Mm,
that's the
right,
reason why we have this problem now.
right. So
Yeah.
given the administration, that we have right now, do you think they will listen to what the sustainability practitioners are saying and the advocates?
Well, the thing is that even in the sustainability space, like even we in sustainability practitioner space, there are some that are advocating.
Mm,
So right now, although the science point to not doing it in the Philippines, but we do have some people that really wanted to support it for these reasons probably. First, it's really, really cheap. It will definitely come out that the nuclear power will definitely be really, really cheap to produce.
mm,
And it's going to be a long time before it gets depleted. So that kind of solves the grid issue. Second, well, not just. I mean, there's another reason why it could be beneficial for the grid, and it's because it can definitely replace the coal power plants easily.
mm,
So you're going the issue of like having a base load, um, and like trying to maintain the grid all throughout, um, will be solved,
right.
technically. And then also because it's not like in like a solar farm where you definitely need a lot of land in order
Mm,
for you to have your solar panels. You just have one big block
mm,
of property creating so much energy.
right.
So in terms of space issues, it's also good.
Mm,
So these are the things that are being talked about in discussions and in debates. How do you how do you have these trade-offs addressed if you really want to go 100% clean energy,
mm.
uh, and then do the transition from traditional sources?
From your perspective, what would be the best option? Given, everything that we have, like budget constraints, the culture in the Philippines, the current administration, what do you think is the best solution for our energy crisis right now?
Diversification.
Mm,
Simply stated, there are places that are good for solar, there are places that are good for wind, there are places that are good for geothermal and hydro.
right.
Let's exploit that. And we also go to biogas. What else? Energy through our food waste,
Mm,
and is being discussed right now. Energy through like your animal manure.
right.
That's on another topic, or like through decaying plants. You also do that. Um, so like last year, there was a law that was passed, um, kind of encouraging that kind of thing.
Mm,
Their waste to energy projects, but it got controversial because that included some initiatives that involve burning your garbage,
okay.
which is definitely the big no-no. But
Mm,
there are other technologies that can would not need to burn,
mm,
but you use the power of the decomposition to do so. So we should explore those technologies as well. And then there's also the current battery storage and
mm,
hydrogen storage and physical storage like pumped hydro,
mm.
um, that's being done in Europe and the United States, or sand storage.
Wow,
You heat up
this
the
is the first time
sand.
I've actually heard of that.
Yeah, so I think it's now successful in some country in Europe
Mm,
where yeah, you heat up the sand and then it slowly, well, when the time is right, you release the heat of the sand and turn it into energy.
that's amazing.
See?
Wow. I should look
Yeah,
into it. Using sand
yeah.
as a renewable energy. Do you think we can do that in the Philippines?
Oh, it's possible. We just need to really find a way to do it here,
Mm,
adapt it to the local setting. One criticism actually of using renewable energy is that it's not adapted to any local setting, at least when they started doing renewable energy in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So there nowadays though, we were more used to it.
Right.
For example, the price of solar panels have actually gone down in the past 10 years in the Philippines. There was an ADB report on it or a World Bank, I think
Mm-hmm.
it was ADB, um, that featured how much have renewable energy prices have fallen in the past, I believe it was 10 years, and
Mm-hmm.
solar was one of the biggest drops
Right.
in terms of capital expenditures. So and so I think acceptability plays a role in that, and kind of say, okay, what's in it for us really? But what we call the buy-in from the
Mm,
stakeholders.
right.
Yeah, it has adapted in the past 10 years. Um, so in the case of sand, if the technology, if there's a localized way to harnessing the sand in the Philippines and adapt it to the grid,
Mm.
then great. No, I look forward to seeing that myself.
So right now, people are actually taking part in using renewable energy in their own homes. Like you said, like this solar energy.
Mhm.
Do you do that as well? Have you like installed
Uh,
solar energy in your own home?
I live in a condominium in Makati, so I can't.
Oh,
But what I'm advocating actually, and I
mm,
have a podcast called Sustainer Rumble that talks about issues on sustainable development. That includes
mm,
this one. And what we're advocating right now is uh, for businesses to participate in a survey on what we call the Green Energy Option Program. So it's a
mm,
program of the government under the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, that if your business is consuming 100 kilowatts of energy per month for about a year
mm,
or more, then you're eligible to switch to renewable energy sources that's already in the grid.
right.
And right now, it's available to businesses in the Luzon and the Visayas areas.
Mm,
So yeah, we do have a survey on that, like a needs analysis survey for businesses, and that includes actually condominium associations.
oh wow.
Um, because technically they're a business, although they're non-stock nonprofit, and but they're supposed to be eligible also for the shift to renewable energy. So um, perhaps I could give you the link
Yes,
to
please.
that survey for listeners to have a look and also
Mm,
respond to the survey. And if there are also any questions in relation to the switch to renewable energy sources, I am very much open to answer your questions.
right, right. So thank you for that. Regular people are struggling to put food on the table.
Mhm.
Um, so why would they care about, saving the planet and using all these renewable energies when they can't eat, they're struggling to, sorry, what was the
Make
word?
ends meet.
Make ends meet.
Ends meet. Okay. The thing is that if we do switch to more sustainable sources and more clean sources of not just power, but also the way that we source our everyday needs,
Mm,
uh, generation of RE, renewable energy, is a fraction of if we get it from coal.
mm-hmm,
Let's have a look at it in this way. The latest data suggests that solar energy is playing around 6 to 7 pesos per kilowatt hour, whereas coal is around, oh, more than more than 16 already.
wow,
Or at some point during the pandemic, it did rise to about 16,
that's a huge
17
gap.
pesos. Imagine how much it would impact your electric bill.
Mm,
Right now, your electric bill is around 11 pesos.
mm-hmm,
Uh, Back then, it was just 8, 9 pesos. The reason for the rise in your electric bill, you can attribute it to the global prices in coal that
mm,
have risen actually to around $400 per metric ton.
mm-hmm,
Um, and so uh, if you think about it, you know, if we switch to sustainable sources, you'd have more money to put more food on the table,
Right.
or even get a more get better food sources for the family, simply because you're not spending that much on electricity in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to the day that the my Meralco bill will definitely go down to about 4 pesos
Is
per
it
kilowatt.
possible?
Oh, um, yeah, I can dream about it.
Right.
It may be possible,
Mm,
uh, considering the trends, but of course, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. Um,
right.
Probably 10, 15 years, if we're going in their current trajectory. So,
Mm,
um, but we can always, again, if we're going to have these conversations in the communities, that 10 to 15 years is going to be what, 3 to 5. So
mm,
that's the power of having uh ourselves talk about it and find solutions about it, rather than just say that, oh, asad na lang tayo sa gobyerno kasi sila
mm.
nagpalagay yung ano dyan. No, 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 no. Um, we, we do have a say on it. So yeah.
So what can us ordinary people do practically to like lessen maybe our carbon emissions or
Okay. The simplest thing that you can do, our extension cables, right?
mm-hmm,
Uh, or our TVs.
mm.
Uh, Simply by just getting it unplugged can save you 10% in your electric bill.
Oh, really?
According
That's
to
for real.
Meralco, that's according to Meralco.
Mm,
So that's also 10% less emissions
right.
per kilowatt hour. That's one.
Mm,
Second is that if you don't need to use your car
mm,
in, let's say, going to get groceries, like if let's say I live in Legazpi Village,
mm.
I need to go get groceries in Landmark.
You can just
But
walk it.
yeah, you just walk it and use a trolley,
Mm,
or the trolley bags,
yeah.
uh, instead of getting your car, put it, parking, put it
Right.
in, and then, you know,
Right.
unless you really have to do like very huge,
Right.
like amount of groceries, or something did happen and would cause you to be inconvenient. But if you want to go practical, you
Mm-hmm,
can just walk it.
mm-hmm,
Um, or if you want to go to some place that's actually close and you don't really need to take a grab or a cab, or yeah, then just walk. And
mm,
for longer distances, really consider going, the bus. Or if you really want to go direct, go P2P
mm,
instead of taking a grab or a cab. Again, it's, if you really want to go practical on this. No.
mm-hmm,
Um, if you don't really need to, take a trip in the Philippines because of a meeting, consider Zoom calling. You
right.
know, it, yeah, the amount of emissions spent in air travel are just significantly higher compared to
Right.
having our conversation today.
Right. Right.
For
Right.
one. So the pandemic actually opened a lot of eyes in all
Mm,
of this. Where before, you like, if there's a business trip, you need to go to Cebu, um, you fly, right?
mm-hmm.
Nowadays,
Zoom.
it's more practical to just go to Zoom. Then
Right.
you only fly if there really needs to be an in-person meeting, talking to about 30 to 40 people,
Mm-hmm.
like in a seminar or a workshop. Great, that's okay. But otherwise, like if you're just having, let's say, 5, 6 people on the meeting and you don't really need to go fly out,
Mm,
Zoom's okay, MS Teams, Google Meet,
right.
whatever. So we're not endorsing Zoom, by the way, guys. So that's why I'm putting,
No, we're not sponsored.
we're not sponsoring that. So, but that's my point.
Right.
Um, Having the online meeting space is a game changer, actually,
Mm,
in the way that it saves us all the time. It also saves about of carbon generated by us.
right.
And lastly, be more sustainable in your food choices.
Mm,
If you know that there's a farmer's market nearby, that sells goods because it really came from the farmer, not like some middleman,
Mm-hmm.
then considering buying from them, even though it's a bit more expensive, um, because you reduced the amount of distance basically for your goods to travel
Mm.
from the farm all the way to the market, and that's a good thing for us also. And
Right.
yeah, consider also, having your own urban garden.
Mm.
Um, I do have an urban garden, even though I live, high up
Right.
in the condominium, and it doesn't just pump in or create like your own micro carbon sink in your home,
Oh wow,
but
yeah.
it also has some pure therapeutic effects,
Mm.
and it has been shown actually that having plants in your house or in the office reduces the amount of strain mentally.
Right. I actually really believe that. I actually have what do you call this? I have a small tree inside my shower because it feels really,
Really?
yeah, it feels really nice when I don't know, it just makes me feel really nice
Yeah,
when I'm showering and there's a small tree right there.
yeah.
It's like I'm in a rainforest, like literally.
See,
So,
that's good for you, both physically, mentally,
yeah,
and
but it's
even
like it's in a pot. So sometimes I
mhm.
have to take it out for the sun.
But that's okay. At
Yeah.
least you're doing something really to address not just issues on the environment, but also issues in terms of your health.
Right. So we actually talked to attorney Abeb, who is the founder of the Tree Huggers movement in Rojas, and she's one of the people that are very passionate about the environment. And she was talking about stuff like grounding and literally tree hugging
Mhm.
because somehow it does release dopamine and oxytocin in your body. As a chemist, is that like, really scientifically proven?
Yeah, it
Really?
is. Yeah, it is.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, it's really just our natural cycle of things.
Mm.
I can't really fully explain it because I've yet to. Actually, I need to go back to reading my biochemistry textbooks on it.
Okay.
Uh, but the idea is that it really stimulates the human body in a way that it kind of calms the nerves,
Mm,
and then gets the hormones to be more on the happy side rather than being on the panic side or the sad side.
right.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. You know, if we could actually just go back to nature. So, right now, speaking of nature and knowing the predicament that we're in, um, is how much do we still have left that we can actually preserve or save in this planet?
It depends on the rate that we're consuming inappropriately.
Mm,
But the limit is 2050, according to the scenarios that are generated or yeah, that were proposed by scientists globally.
hmm.
Um, it could be less, though. It could be less.
Right.
We can probably see it in the next 10 years.
Does this mean like, a lot of people are saying this could be the mass extinction that we've been waiting for?
Well, I wouldn't be too over dramatic and go to that point.
Mm,
But if we do hit that 1.5-degree limit proposed by scientists, then whatever we do will be irreversible.
right. So right now, how do you see the reality of the planet in say like 10 years?
Oh, uh, yeah. well, if we don't do anything drastic in about 10 years, then we're going to hit that 1.5 mark.
What does it look like exactly? Like, can you give us a
Uh,
visual?
if it's already hot outside, it's going to be way hotter outside. You're
Mm,
going to see it would be very hard to walk um yeah on the sidewalk, even
mm,
if there's like shade, because it's very very low, very very hot or very, very humid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it just in the Philippines, or like is it all over the planet?
It's observed globally.
Right.
If you go to LinkedIn, there are certain people in the climate change space that will say that India has reached 50 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And that's like, after incorporating the heat index, it can go even as high as 60 if we don't do anything. So
People can actually
uh
die.
exactly.
I see that a lot of young people are really into sustainability and climate justice. Is there a way that we can actually turn this thing around? Or is it too
Really
late?
needs to no, it's not too late to learn about what's going on, to adapt or kind of internalize it in your space,
Mm,
in your own field.
mm-hmm,
Um, Even in the creatives sector, there are certain people that are writing poetry or narratives or even doing like performances, live
right,
performances on this. And it's a way to communicate to the people and tell them that hey, this is for real, guys. Act on it, kind of thing.
right.
So there, you know, every single contribution helps. It's not a big thing. I mean, it's not a you don't need a very big thing to happen uh, right now
Mm-hmm,
to save the world from the problems of climate change. But smaller contributions definitely will make bigger impacts.
right. And so one of the biggest groups that contribute into this would be corporations. So how do we exactly tackle that problem? Because it seems so big, and
Right.
it looks like the corporations are just hell bent on gaining more profit. And,
Well, in the business space,
mhm,
and this is kind of part of my day job.
mm,
So I we do our best to talk to business people, the decision makers in the industry, and tell them that whatever business model that you'll have, it will definitely be impacted by climate.
mm,
Uh, for example, how can a person get to your local supermarket that's owned by, a big corporation if if it gets flooded in the first place?
right.
You're going to lose sales for one day or even more.
Hmm.
And would you want that? Uh, Definitely not. So how do you do it? So how would you help solve the problem? So
Mm,
in the Philippines, there are movements like that from big business. However, it's still in the starting stages. It's not yet well understood.
hmm.
And but there are people that are working on that. Yeah,
So being in that space, do you see any progress at all?
yeah, there has been progress. But the challenge remains is that it's not yet well understood by the rest of the whole business landscape here in the Philippines.
Hmm.
So a lot more needs to be done, especially in the SME space. That
Mm,
contributes to about more than 90% of the whole amount of businesses in the Philippines.
mm,
If we go by the less than 1%, uh, they're already required to act on it.
hmm.
But the SME space they're really struggling to address this issue at the same time be profitable. And it's
Right,
understandable. It's very, very expensive sometimes to start a sustainability project.
right,
Uh, but there are startups that are already incorporating these issues into their business model.
hmm,
And I think for the ordinary person to see that maybe should and then maybe support that would mean a lot to
right.
them. Yeah.
So one of the examples that we saw about um thinking about business and or sustainability would be during the transportation strike that happened recently
Yes.
in Manila. Can I get your opinions on that? Like, what exactly should we take? What steps should we take regarding the whole transportation phase out.
Right. So the idea of the transportation phase out is that it came from a program from the government to modernize our Jeeps. There's
Mhm.
nothing really wrong in modernizing our Jeeps,
Right.
right? The issue is that the way that it was implemented got bad because of funding issues.
Mm.
And it really stretched beyond the previous administration to the current administration. And the way that's being implemented right now, it's kind of like forcing the Jeeps to switch.
Mm.
But how would you get them to switch if we got hit by COVID? We got hit also the impacts of the wars overseas
Right.
with the global oil prices. So um, uh, I think uh, the idea is good. The execution needs to be better because
Mm-hmm.
and I think there has to be a way that people can sit down, rethink about how the program should be done.
Right.
Because the objectives of the program is good. The way, yeah, it's just the way that's being handled is not so.
If you could be in the room where it happens, right, what would be your solution? What would you lay out to them?
Well, we really need to know, how much would a new e-Jeep would be, how much would I think it's a Euro 4 right now.
Mm-hmm.
E-Jeep would be, uh, get the pros and cons, gets, be more creative also in the sourcing of the Jeeps if it's more expensive than yeah, than what it is today. If we need
Right.
to create our own local industry to do this, uh, then we should.
Mm-hmm.
We should give them support. But then again, all of these are just you know easy to say, very hard to do.
Right.
So the first thing we need to do is really to get to it is to sit down, identify the problem, find the solutions, and kind of narrow it down to one particular solution. It's a case um, of nationwide design and systems thinking, really,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to issues like these.
Do you think that we're actually at the point where we're actually really doing that? Because it seems like we have so many problems right now in the country that's like in the back burner.
Uh, I believe so. There are discussions right now in the e-vehicle space,
Mm.
where the we did have a law passed about developing the local electric vehicle industry. It's more focused on the public sector more than the private sector.
Mm.
One positive way of looking at it is that you got e-scooters, you got your e-cars already. I actually saw the latest SUV by Nissan for one.
Mm.
That's an e-car already.
Oh wow, an
Uh,
SUV.
an SUV, yeah.
Wow.
So it runs electric. I haven't really seen the details. I just saw it in the mall today. So,
Right,
but
right, right.
it's been very beneficial. I myself have an electric scooter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Before when I used to work at Ortigas, I used to take my e-scooter from Makati to Ortigas via BGC.
Now, and it's just on one charge.
Yeah, one charge.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Takes me like 30 minutes to get there. I know it's long, but it's better than being bogged down in traffic anyway.
Yeah, true. Especially now, I don't think the traffic in Manila is getting any better.
No, it's not.
So, right now, Jonas, a lot of people are trying to they're trying to get this message across. But if you could speak to all the people that can make things happen, the decision makers, as you would say, what would you say to them?
Tara, usap tayo. No, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
That line from Bonabonta is actually a very effective way of telling them, sit down with us. Let's
Hmm.
talk.
Yeah. It's very powerful,
We
actually. As we end this conversation, is there anything that you would like to tell our audience regarding this whole thing?
Right. when I do PowerPoint presentations about
Mhm.
issues like climate change or sustainability in general, I quote Nick Joaquin. He
Okay.
wrote something in 1988 on you know kung hindi tayo kikilos, sino kikilos? And I think
Mm,
let me just the idea is that we can do something,
mm,
and it's not in my backyard thing.
mhm.
It's really about having your own contribution done, and then encouraging people to to act on it.
Right.
Collective action is a very powerful thing um, to do really in the Philippines, and especially in the Philippines,
Mhm.
where we do have the concept of bayanihan and stuff like that. So Nick Joaquin in 1988 wrote,
Mhm.
"Have our capacities been so diminished by small efforts, we are becoming incapable even to the small things. Our present problems are surely not what might be called colossal or insurmountable, yet we stand helpless before them. As the population swells, these problems will expand and multiply. If they daunt us now, if will they crush us then? The prospect is terrifying."
Mm.
I leave it at that.
Wow. So I guess it is true that in small ways we can actually make a difference.
Agree.
All right. So, Jonas, is there anything that you would like to promote?
I do encourage people to listen to our podcast, Sustain a Rumble, and I'll definitely send you the link offline
Yes.
after this conversation, so that everyone business could be involved. Maybe you got sunny side store that's probably so big that it could consume 100 kilowatts. Of course, that's not possible, but
Mhm.
we really want to get everyone's thoughts on it, uh, and see how this would play out really in the future. Maybe if the government needs to lower the threshold for renewable energy, or um do something to be more wholesome, or more people would be impacted, that'd be great. In
Mhm.
addition, it's no I hope that you know we can continue these conversations beyond this podcast episode, and I'm if there are any questions, I'm actually you could reach me on Facebook or on LinkedIn, and we can continue the conversations there. Other than that, yeah, I hope that if there's any one that's interested in the climate space, I hope that they would be able to read the latest scientific reports.
Mhm.
And if there's anyone that gets confused about it, again, you can just talk to me. I'll be happy to interpret that for you.
There we
So
go. Yeah, thank you so much, Jonas. It was such an eye-opening night for me. Thank you
well,
so much.
thank you also.
All right. See you.
Bye.
Goodbye.